All right, colleagues, are we all set? Shall we begin? 1 minute? All right. Good morning. Are we all set? Okay. Shall we begin the press briefing now? All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, members of the press, for joining us this morning. This morning, we want to talk about education and why human capital development is quite relevant and why the African Union is using year 2024 to prioritize education and skills development. My name is Doreen Apollos. I'll be moderating this particular press conference this morning. I'm joined by Commissioner for Education, Science and Technology and Innovation from the African Union Commission, Professor Mohammed, and he will take us through the briefing. What we're going to do this morning, we will hear the briefing from His Excellency Commissioner, and then after that we'll open the floor for questions and any other interjections that you may have. So Commissioner, allow me to give you the floor to brief us on the theme of the year 2024.
Yeah. You are very vigilant, huh? Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. When I was at high school, every day when we go, there was a sort of poster, well-framed, well-protected. And there was like a quotation or a quote of one of our first president of the Republic of Algeria after independence. So I was young at the time, as you may imagine. And the quote said the following: a people who doesn't educate, tout peuple qui ne s'instruit pas, any people who doesn't educate itself will go down and die. And sooner or later, it will be subjugated. In French, tout peuple qui ne s'instruit pas périclite et meurt, et tôt ou tard, il tombe en état de suggestion. This was in 1963-64. And then I asked myself, what happened since independence for our countries? And despite all the efforts, there were genuine and quite important efforts to educate our people. But when you look at the picture today, it is a quite concerning picture. That is why, immediately after I took office as Commissioner for Education, Science, Technology and Innovation in the African Union, I thought it was a good chance for me to try to push as much as I could to bring back education at the forefront of concern and priority of our states, of our people, of our communities, of our media community, of our parents and, of course, of our youth, because education, yes, it's a fundamental human right. And as you know, when there is a right, there is a duty bearer. And when we talk about fundamental human rights, the duty bearers are the governments. Primarily, they are the governments. But the governments can't do everything alone. Governments have also competing priorities. Governments have to deal with agriculture, they have to deal with security, they have to deal with industry, they have to deal with trade, they have to deal with transportation, infrastructure, and name them all. So sometimes we lose focus on a priority, especially when the people who are in that priority are usually people who do not want, because of their commitment to their country, because of their commitment to their job, they don't want to go on strike and to go and put too much noise in the street, you know. That is the case mainly for social sectors like health and education. You know, before medical doctors or nurses go to the streets, you need really, the things need to be really, really worse than worse, so that they go to the street. And the same for the education people. But you know, when people don't go to the streets, sometimes what happens is that they are forgotten. They are somehow neglected in terms of the priorities, that the multiple priorities that I mentioned and that are on the desk of any prime minister or any head of state in our country. So we started working within the Department of Education, Science, Technology and Innovation, first to convince the Commission that we need to have a theme of the year on education. Then when we started convincing the Commission, at the same time we were very lucky, because at the very same time the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, took a very bold decision to convene a global meeting on transforming education. It's a summit, so it was a summit. It was called the Transforming Education Summit. It took place on the margins of the UN General Assembly of September 2022. And we had just started here, just before that, we had started already writing some notes on the issue of having education as a theme of the year. So we took advantage of that decision by the UN Secretary General to organize a side event, an African AU side event on transforming education. And we had a couple of heads of states. Of course, we had the chairperson of the African Union, the chairman of the Assembly of the Union at the time, His Excellency President Macky Sall, and we had some executives of international organizations like UNICEF, UNESCO, World Food Programme, and some big partners like Global Partnership for Education and some others. Before I continue, I want just to show you that it is interesting that the UN Secretary General was thinking somehow like we were thinking, that we should do something on education. He also has multiple priorities, because at the time, imagine, we were not even at the end of the COVID pandemic. And the issues on the table were very many, you know. We had the issue of debt crisis. We had the issue of climate change. We had the issue of peace with the Ukraine-Russia war. We have the issues related to global financial crisis. And in the middle of this, he chose education. That shows that really this is a global important problem. And he chose education on the ground that the situation of education in the world as a whole is witnessing a setback in infrastructure, a setback in quality of education, a setback in education for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, a setback in the consideration and respect due to the teaching profession, and so on and so forth. So then we got from the chairperson himself during that side event in New York, he mentioned that African Union should consider education as a theme for 1 year. We had hoped that it would be in 2023, but there was already another topic chosen for 2023, which is acceleration of the African continental free trade area. But nevertheless, we were happy because we knew now that the next one would be ours, because we had laid the ground for it. And also, it gave us time to prepare very well this theme for the year 2024. We prepared a concept note, which was shared by so many partners. It is owned by all the partners around the place. It is owned also by member states, because we shared with ministers of education. And that is the concept note and also a roadmap. And that is the concept note and roadmap that I presented yesterday to the Executive Council, and I'm going to present again tomorrow, after tomorrow, to the summit of the African Union. So, back to Africa, because as I told you, globally, there is a setback. But, you know, when you are at this level, when you are high in performance in any domain, and you have a little setback, it's not a big deal. But when you are already low, and then you have a big setback, then you go lower, and that is a big deal. So what is the situation of education in our continent today? I can go on and on and on with so many figures, but let me just focus on 3 or 4 major elements. The first one is, we say that education is a human right and that universal education should be granted and guaranteed for every child everywhere, with no discrimination whatsoever related to sex, religion, region, social status, and so on and so forth. But the reality, unfortunately, is not that simple. As I speak, we have a school-age population in Africa of 500 million, 500 million. And out of that 500 million, almost 100 million are not attending school. I'm talking about people aged between 5 and 19, meaning the period of schooling, primary and secondary schooling. This is very concerning, isn't it? This means that we have a mass of 100 million children that are not socially integrated, because at that age, the social integration is mainly through school. When you are not attending school, you are not socially integrated. When you are not socially integrated, you are vulnerable to all sorts of vulnerabilities. You can be manipulated by terrorists and become one of them. You can be manipulated by drug dealers and you make easy money and you become a dealer yourself. You can be manipulated by human trafficking. You are a young girl, they will promise you some good things, they will take you, and you find yourself taken into some networks of crime, of all sorts of crime, from sexual abuse to all sorts of crime, actually. And so on and so forth. So that is already one big problem. And that problem is not only, it doesn't affect only our countries. It affects, of course, primarily our countries. But those young people, we all know what they do. They will try to cross from country to country, to go to migrate either in the continent, and we know all that there are some countries which are recipients of illegal migrants in the continent. If you go to South Africa, if you go to Angola, if you go to Zambia, some of the countries are like recipients of this migration. But beyond this illegal migration within the continent, there is migration outside the continent, and the young people from sub-Saharan Africa are crossing the Sahara, and many of them are dying in the Sahara. And those who do not die in the Sahara, they are exploited by dealers, all sorts of dealers in North Africa. I mean, whenever there is something to exploit, you know that criminals, they always use that. And then they will try to either settle there, which sometimes is a good chance for them because at least they didn't die, or they would try to cross the sea to go to Europe. And crossing the sea is proven very difficult and very, very adventurous. And many of them are dying in the seas, and you see this every day. It's in the media. And then when they succeed, for those who succeed, in Europe, they are also subject to discrimination. They are subject also to vulnerabilities, because the same vulnerabilities that I mentioned before, when you are without papers and you find yourself in a European country and you are black or you are, you don't speak the language and people know that, so you are starting already from a lower level of respectability or chances to be inserted in the society. And many of them find themselves again into the hands of networks of crime, different types of crime. So this is to talk about this mass of 100 million, which is really an important problem for us. And that problem could be sorted by looking better at vocational education and training, and supporting these young people to get some skills so that they can even start their own job and become like job creators instead of job seekers or vulnerable to the issues that I mentioned before. Now, if we look at the school itself, if you take children at age of 10 and you give them a simple text adjusted to their age and their level of comprehension and knowledge and understanding, 9 of these 10 children on average in Africa will not be able to read it properly, that text, and to give you like a summary of what they can get from that text. And this is another very, very important issue, because this means that you have invested for 5 years in the education system, and what you are getting is almost scratch, is almost zero. It means that we need to do more in terms of quality of our education, in terms of qualification of our teachers, in terms of the way we are teaching children. How come that after 5 years or 6 years at school, the children cannot read? Something is wrong, and we have to address it. The third element is that when we look at the teaching profession, we have a big problem there. First, the teaching profession has been more and more, I remember when I was a young child, the teacher in the village, he was like, after God and the Prophet, you have the teacher. There is a say in Arabic which says, قُمْ لِلْمُعَلِّمِ وَفِّيهِ التَّبْجِيلَ كَادَ الْمُعَلِّمُ أَنْ يَكُونَ رَسُولًا, meaning stand up to the teacher and give him respect because the teacher is almost a prophet. Is it the case today? The teacher today, you know, the parents, when the teacher is trying to give some orientation to the parents come and fight with the teacher. They will not recognize that their kid is not making the necessary effort. The salaries of the teacher went down to the extent that in many of our countries, and we all know it, teachers are having 2-3 jobs to be able to cope with the cost of life. So there is a problem with the teaching profession. Unfortunately enough, on this problem, the UN Secretary General put in place, because of this the big summit that we were lucky to have in parallel with our efforts, he put in place a group of high-level panel bringing together those who know about employment, those who know about education, meaning that he brought together experts from the International Labour Organization, he brought experts from the UNESCO, experts from all different other partner organizations, and also he brought together with unions representing the teachers to come up with some recommendation to rehabilitate the teaching profession. And those recommendations were published recently, I think November or December. And we are lucky to have them because now we will just be advocating for member states to look at those recommendations which are very balanced and which will help to reinvigorate a profession with whom or with which there is no progress whatsoever you could expect in the education system. You would all agree with me. So it is very important that we address this issue as well. Fourth element is about financing. Because all what I say, I mean, it's easy to say, but if I were a minister of education today, I would have every year to go and negotiate with my president and with my prime minister to get a budget allocation. And usually what I get in the budget allocation is never enough to, to fulfill the needs of the sector. And this is not only because the government or the president would not like to give us money. This is because countries have a limited budget. And that limited budget, you know, is just like a father or a mother. When you have your salary at the end of the month, there are some of the things that you can do, and some of the things that you cannot afford, because you have to balance between, you know, schooling of your kids, medical care, food, transportation, clothing, etc., etc. So it's the same for the government. It means that the government has a certain basket, and it has to share that basket between all the sectors, and the education will get what it gets. So UNESCO recommends that countries put 15%, if I'm wrong, you correct me, you guys, the experts, because sometimes maybe I may be wrong. So, so 15% of the national budget should go to education. But sometimes it is not easy even to have those 15% because there are other problems or because they don't have enough money to afford for everything. So, and in this area, what is now, again, thanks to this discussion that took place in New York, now there is like awareness at the global level that some countries in Africa may not have the, do you have a problem? Sorry, what is the problem?
No, it's okay. He's having a problem with the set.
Yes, from time to time. I am sorry for that.
You may proceed.
I can give you some words in French if you wish, but we will have demonstration by the others. Okay. So, where was I? With the financing, yes. I was talking about the financing. You know, when you go to northern countries, for instance, Nordic countries, they have one of the best education system in the world, and it is free of charge. Up to the high education levels, and it is the same quality for a poor woman with 2 kids and a rich woman with 2 kids. It's the same. That's the I would say the beauty of the way they are organized as governments, as society, as community. But we shouldn't forget something. The pressure on them is lower because the demography is lower. We have 500 million children to school. They have much less than that because they are small populations, small demographic growth. It means small numbers of children to take to school every year. It means smaller budget will be enough. And of course, the contrary is for us. And that is why now there is this global awareness that the funding issue of education is structural. It means that it is difficult for some countries, even if the political will is there, even if the money is there, it will not be enough. So they need help. They need support. They need global support, at least if we are to reach universal coverage and to fulfill the commitment of the international community towards the human rights, and education is a human right. The estimates made are that Africa may need like 90 billion US dollars to reach universal coverage of education by 2030 if we want really to reach. Are you now with a good translation? Yes. Our translators are very good. It's not the translation, it's the it's the system which sometimes has some shortcomings. I hope you are translating me well, because I will control. Thank you. So these are 4 elements that I wanted to share with you just to show you how deep and how systemic is the crisis of education. And this shows you why it is important that we try to put again education on the spotlight or under the spotlight, just as you are putting me under the spotlight with this projector, which I don't like. So now we prepared a concept note to convince our member states about this situation, and we just took the arguments that I have tried to put simply in front of you to convince them that it is important that we do something about it. And they are now convinced because they gave us already the green light, and they asked us to prepare a roadmap to put some efforts during this year related to education. So we prepared a roadmap which is basically quite similar to the recommendations that came from the Transforming Education Summit in New York, from our AU side event in New York, and from the elements that I have just mentioned to you. This roadmap has 10, we tried to summarize into 10 groups of action that countries may choose 2 or 3 of them to try to reinvigorate their education systems. These 10 topics are, one is related to the teaching profession, as you may expect. One is also on foundational literacy and science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, because what I told you about reading is very similar about mathematics. If you give some arithmetics operations, simple arithmetic operation to our kids, they are no longer capable of doing it properly. So we need also to focus on that. Teaching profession, STEM. We have a point also that I didn't mention to you, which is very dear to our experts and to our political leaders, is to try to decolonize the teaching of history. So we need to build the capacity of our teachers to be able to teach African history with African sources and with an African narrative, because often we are still sort of we are still using the colonial narrative instead of using the African narrative. And fortunately, we have enough resources in terms of knowledge about African history written by African experts. As you know, UNESCO has done a great job by writing a global general African history through under the leadership of a very, very senior and very renowned African scholar whose name is Joseph Kizerbo. So that's the third one. Then we have a point on conducive environments, favorable environments for education. When we talk about conducive environments, we are talking about minimum infrastructure. We are talking about bringing at least one meal at school feeding. We are talking about bringing a health package at school, meaning that children, when they go to school, they have like a screening, a health screening, etc. Because it has been proven that when you bring those elements like school feeding or like health at school, you immediately increase the level of enrollment, and particularly the level of enrollment of young girls. And this is very important because we have also a deficit of enrollment of girls. In some countries, girls do not go to school, and you know it all. Or maybe they go to school only in the big cities, but in the rural areas they are neglected and they remain at home. We have other elements also which are, my memory is starting to, yes, we have something related to TVET and higher education. Obviously, I mentioned why it is important that we invest in vocational and training and education, and also we want also to continue to invest in science, technology, and innovation at higher levels, because all what I mentioned so far is, I'm talking about primary and secondary school, but we do not forget that pre-primary education is very important. We have now evidence, scientific evidence, that children that start very early to be educated are performing in their lives better than the average population. It has been proven seriously that even when you are at age of 60 or 50, you are doing better. You are in a better position than if you have started very early, if your parents started educating you at 2 at age of 2 or 3, that means that pre-primary education is also very important in the fate of an individual and of course in the fate of the community at large, because it is individuals who make the community, isn't it? Yeah, so that is also a point that we are working on. And also in our roadmap there is a mention of digital transformation, because we think that digitalization is very important. We need to train our teachers about being able to use the digital tools that we have to bring education to our children, and also the digitalization, digital transformation could make us reach more children, especially in remote areas. You can have platforms whereby children can get access and can get knowledge straightforward, even if they don't have books and even if they are far from a library or something like that. So digitalization is an important point. And also we want to always be aware of giving like a positive discrimination or action towards vulnerable groups, starting from girls, but also groups of displaced population, or groups in conflict areas, or handicapped people, etc. All these people need to have special attention by our education systems. And also at the end of this list we mentioned partnership, because education is a public responsibility, it's a public good, but it's a collective shared responsibility. As I said before, I want to insist on that, because if we do not bring everybody on board, we may lose opportunities. You know, we have a good experience with the World Food Programme, which is like leading the effort of governments to develop homegrown school feeding. And the good news with these programs is that now many countries are providing homegrown school feeding to a big chunk of the school population. And this is done more and more through domestic resources. It means that when you put focus on something, you can get results. Countries have realized that when they bring one meal at school, the enrollment rate is higher, the dropout rate is lower, and the rate of girls going to school is higher. So in addition, of course, to the fact that the nutritional status of those children is better, and that their capacity then to understand and to learn is higher. So it's a win-win process, because homegrown school feeding is school feeding through local production of food. It means that you are also like feeding a circular economy where women farmers, young farmers, those who have small exploitations can also get a good income from their work and contribute to the global welfare of the community in which they are living. So this is basically a sort of vulgarization of our roadmap and our concept note. I think I will stop there. But before I stop, I want really to tell you, media people, that you have a role also to play in this. You have a role to play in showing case of good practices here and there. Yesterday, when I presented this in a less popular manner to our leaders, there were 24 reactions from 24 countries. And everybody had brought a little bit of their own national experience about education, where they are, what are the gaps, what are the challenges, what are the good practices. There are a lot of good practices, and we do not hear about them. What are you doing? You should be telling us those stories in your countries. And there are also challenges that are different from country to country. So let us know, and you can be you are the, media come from medium. Medium means the person who is in between. That's what medium is. So between what is happening in the field and us, you are there. You are the one who fill in the gap. So please play that role, fill the gap, show us what our young people think about their education system. Tell us what is well done somewhere so other countries could be inspired by that experience. And tell us also what are the challenges that need to be addressed immediately. And sometimes there are some really burning challenges here and there. But if the media do not play that role of information, responsible information, we may lose some good opportunities. I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Excellency Commissioner. You've given us such an elaborate brief on the theme of the year, which focuses on education, the nexus between education and other critical sector, be it peace and security, migration, trade, and the labor market as well. Commissioner has also highlighted the literacy levels and given us the numbers and given us a case onto why we must continue focusing on education, as well as the teaching profession and how the continent intends to enhance that teaching profession, why we need to finance the education sector as well, and the roadmap of 10 key points of what the year will entail, what critical areas the theme of the year will focus on. Members of the press, we want to open the floor to you now to be able to pose your questions, if any. I will request that you introduce yourself by name, the media house that you're representing, and then make your question a bit brief. May I see by show of hands who has any questions to Commissioner? We have one hand here. Any other hand in the room? We have a hand there. Any other? And a hand there. May I take those three questions first, and then once Commissioner responds, we can open the floor later. Sir, please, you may go first.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Is the mic on? Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'd like to thank the Commissioner and also my fellow colleagues in the media. My name is Mohammed Belhocine from the SABC's Channel Africa. You spoke largely about the plight of the teachers, where it seems like they are neglected when it comes to as far as salaries are concerned. These professionals are a source of professors, engineers, doctors, even presidents, and other key professions. So you as a commission, how would you be able to convince member states to really rehabilitate teachers' incomes as part of your education solution? Because indeed, I don't want to add anything, but they are crying. Right? But as I said, that I gave an example that they have produced us. They produce us daily, but they are not thought of. Another issue is political will to change the education system is another issue. I think in my country, I come from South Africa, where for you to become a counselor, you don't have to have any qualification. So that person is making decisions, big decisions, doesn't have a qualification. How would that person push for education? Because he's not educated. From a council, he can become a member of parliament. And then he's moving to the ministry. He can become maybe a prime minister or something without relevant education. Are you discussing these issues?
Thank you, Michael. May I go to you?
Thank you. My name is Murula.
Sorry, say it again, a little bit louder.
Hanusi.
Your name? Mula? I think there was noise from there. I didn't hear anything. Yeah, Mr. Mula, yeah, please go ahead.
Put the mic closer so we may hear you, Mula.
Or maybe if I put this, do I have an amplification of the? Oh yeah, okay, go ahead.
Just want to know about your expectation about the end of this summit. What do you expect from countries and governments to do?
Mullah, kindly speak up so we are able to hear you. And the interpretation as well can barely hear you. Mullah, are you done with your question? All right. May we kindly go to him?
Thank you so much, Commissioner. My name is Idnak.
May I kindly ask you to come use this microphone because the roving mic is not audible to the interpreters. If you could kindly walk here and use this microphone on this table to ask your question.
So those who want to ask questions come here.
We will not be, the interpreters will not be able to hear you. You have to speak to this to the mic.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. My name is Idnak Acho from the CGTN. How does African Union plan to collaborate with the member states and the stakeholders addressing the challenge and opportunities outlined in the team and ensuring advanced in education, science and technology across the continent? Thank you.
Thank you, Nigachu. May I come to you as the, yes.
صباح الخير دكتور محمد. طبعا ملاحظ من كلام حضرتك ان هناك خريطه طريق كما اشرت للتعليم في افريقيا، لكن في معظم هذه الخطوات ربما التمويل سيكون له دور مهم جدا. ما هي خططكم فيما يتصل بتمويل هذه المشروعات الطموحه في افريقيا؟
Thank you, Commissioner. We may take the 4 questions from CNBC and then proceed.
Yes, thank you. SABC, are you from the opposition? I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't mind. I'm a Democrat, so no problems. Yeah, you are right. And I mean the realization of the issue of teachers is very important. It's not only in Africa, by the way. It's not only in Africa. I mean, in Europe, teachers are demonstrating. In France, there are more you know, I don't know how to say it in English. People have, limited contracts, you know. They have limited contracts, and they are going 6 months by 6 months. Or 1 year by 1 year. And you cannot expect to have quality education and sustainable education if you do not put the resources on the table. And unfortunately, there is no other solution than to have really public investment in it. I mean, the private sector, yes, it can play some role. But the private sector is a sector which is for profit. So it doesn't benefit everybody. And it is, you know, you have to pay fees, you have to pay tuition, you have to pay, you know how it is. So it is not the sector whereby you can expect to guarantee equity, to guarantee universal coverage. So it is very important then to look at this. And the good news is that now that the world is realizing that education is in crisis, the world realizes that if you want to get rid of this crisis, it is also, and probably more so, a matter of funding. And it links with the question of our brother from Egypt. The issue of funding is taking shape at the global level. Can you imagine? I was in UNESCO a couple of weeks ago, just in 2023, for a meeting of the high-level steering committee. It was put in place by UNESCO to follow up on the recommendations of the Transforming Education Summit. And we had some very big, renowned people. And when we started talking about funding of education, you had somebody like Gordon Brown. I don't know if you know who is Gordon Brown. He's a former Prime Minister of the UK. And he's now, working in a foundation or something like that on education. And we had somebody like Jeffrey Sachs, who very well-known economist, who is an advisor to the UN Secretary General on issues related to sustainable development goals. When these two people, which come from like sort of different elements of, one is conservative, the other one is more like liberal, and these two people are advocating for innovative ways of funding education globally, meaning that they are basically talking about let's put in place a global fund for education, just like we had the global fund for AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. I come from the health sector, and I know how that global fund was a turning point in addressing the issues of HIV/AIDS in Africa.
Sorry to interject you. It's something that I also wanted to It's something that I wanted to echo when you talk about the fund. Mm-hmm. Whereby is the AU thinking about doing that for Africa?
Well, AU is, very often you have the tendency to consider AU as a funding partner. AU is not a funding partner. AU is an association of member states. So the budget of AU comes from the member states, basically from the member states. AU gets its legitimacy from the trust entrusted in it by the member states. We have a convening power. We have a voice which is respected because the member states are giving us that mandate. We would be nothing without that. So we are not the World Bank and we are not the African Development Bank. You see? We can put on the table issues like this. Now we have the good news that AU is now a member of the G20. And we are going to add our voice to make this global fund for education happen sooner than later. And that's exactly what I said yesterday with the ministers of foreign affairs. I told them we should now put our weight and our voice with those voices of Jeffrey Sachs and Gordon Brown and all other experts in the world, because India is coming very strong on it, many other countries. And it's Africa which has 90% of the needs in terms of funding. So that's how it will go. And of course the teacher's profession will, countries will sort of breathe if this global fund is put in place. But let us not wait until that one comes, because if you look at the statistics, the other day I was looking at the statistics of a report which is about to be published. We prepared it with UNICEF on financing of education. And you see that the majority of our countries are far below the benchmark of 15% of national budget allocated to education. Some are doing very well. Some are going even more than 20%. But many others But many others are really below the benchmark of 15%. And if these countries could just uplift a little bit their efforts to reach that level, it would probably make a difference. Okay? Then the issue of political will, you know, political will is a global thing. It is very different from a country to country. It's very different from a situation to a situation, and you never know how this political will come. Now we have a couple of, you know, sort of standard things that we need to do. If you don't have it enough, you have to advocate more. You have to put your case clearer. Sometimes the politician, you know, the way you put your case, if I come with mathematical models and figures and I put this on the table for somebody who didn't know what is a curve, I will not convince him. But if I tell him a story, I will convince him. I know of a country, when I was working with the World Health Organization, where people were struggling to get a cancer program in the country for years, until the day the First Lady got something in that area. And then the head of state had become like very, 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 he became the advocate for having a cancer program in his country because the First Lady was sick. So sometimes you never know how these things happen at that level. But you need to keep, that is why your responsibility and our responsibility is to advocate tirelessly with all levels of the community. If we are convinced of something, we have to continue to advocate, just like the missionaries do for convincing you that Jesus Christ or Muhammad or Vishnu are the best prophets in the world. So I think I answered, Dorsey, also your question, so I will not need to come back to you. What do we expect from member states? Yes, you know, this roadmap, we are, as I said, maybe you were not listening to me carefully because you wouldn't have asked this question. No, I'm just joking. What we expect from member states is that depending on as I said, 24 countries spoke yesterday. So each country is at a different level of development of its education system. So maybe one country would say, I would go for having a good education information system, because I don't know how many children are dropping out every year. I don't know how many children I have to school every year. I don't know how many children are succeeding or are performing well. So I need a good information system. And by the way, I forgot to mention information system is one of our points in the roadmap. Or another country will say, okay, I have problems in rural areas because children are walking 5 kilometers to go to school and there is no meal at midday. So I need to have a homegrown school feeding program, and I will start with that. So the idea is just to make sure that the spotlight is put again on education, and that each country can select 2 or 3 of the group of actions in the 10 that I mentioned to just uplift and start to do something on it. And yesterday, at the end of the discussion, one minister said, actually, I realized that education shouldn't be the theme of 1 year. It should be the theme of all our years. So that message, let's take it up and let's make it like the message of this year, that this year is not enough, that education, we should put it on the spotlight every year. And I think you journalists, you media people, you have really a very, very big role to play in this domain.
Please, can we come back to Arabic once Commissioner is done with the briefing, so that we keep the flow of the conversation. We have also people who are joining us online, and then he will come back to Arabic. Thank you.
CGT collaborate with member states and partners. Yes, we will collaborate. We are already collaborating with many UN partners, particularly UNESCO, UNICEF, and the World Food Program, as I mentioned already. They have programs with some countries, so we are going to work with them on those programs, but also we intend to have like regional or even continental global meetings talking about one or the other of these issues that I mentioned to you. All these things will happen in 2024. And we will report back to the African Union Summit in February 2025 on what has been done during the year. وش قلت لي حبيبي؟ You want? I think I have finished with my answers.
Yes, you have, Commissioner. Unless there's another burning question, I would like to close the press conference. So allow me to take please approach the microphone here. I'll only take 2 more questions, and then we close the briefing. Please approach the mic so you can speak to the mic. Your name, the media house you present, and a very short question, please.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Henok Tesfaye from CCTV. I just want to ask you about the philosophy behind the African education system. Maybe it's fact that we import many things from abroad, and unfortunately we also import education system and curriculum from abroad. Don't you think this is one of the root problem of African education system? And can you mention any research and undertakings under your commission to create homegrown education system and curriculum so that our children could learn their own education system in their school? Thank you.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you.
May you take the mic?
Yeah.
أحلام محمد من وكالة الأنباء الأثيوبية. سؤالي هو: ما هي الجهود والنجاحات التي تقوم بها الاتحاد الأفريقي في مجال جودة التعليم وسهولة الوصول للتعليم في أفريقيا؟ إذا في الإمكان الإجابة باللغة العربية. شكرا.
Thank you. And the last one here.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Yvonne Katsande from LN24 SA. Just as my colleague was asking that, what is the philosophy behind the education system in Africa? I wanted to add on, just to buttress his point, to say then, the people that are funding the education system in Africa, who are these people? From the names that you actually mentioned, Commissioner, it looks like we have people coming out from funders, or should I say institutions, that could be questionable, in the sense that what really is their objective in terms of funding the African educational system. For example, I've always questioned the Rothschild education system. The people that you've mentioned are also mentored by the Rothschild. Is that the solution for Africa, or Africa can look inward? Thank you.
Thank you. We will respond to those questions. Commissioner may not particularly respond to the last questions on the accusations on certain personalities or organizations mentioned, as we maybe will look into that and give you a proper answer. But for now, Commissioner, you can respond to maybe Commissioner will respond to the other questions on the philosophy and the allegations about questionable funders. He can look into that and then maybe respond to that later. Commissioner.
No problem. No problem. Let's respond so that we go back to our. Okay. Importing from abroad. The humankind always learned from the others. And when you start doing something, most often you don't start from scratch. You start from looking at what your neighbors are doing and start to imitating them. And then as you go and as you grow, you start mastering the process that you have been using, and when you master it well, you become innovator because you start improving on that process. So it's exactly the same for education. You know, when Japan was destroyed in 1945, Japan was in rubble. There was nothing. It was completely destroyed. 1945. 1970, which is 45 years later, the best video recorder and video player was Japanese. The best cars in the market became Japanese. So what did they do? They started by importing books from Europe and using the books that they imported from Europe to teach their people. They didn't ask question why I am using this book, etc. They didn't have anything else. So you start with what you have. Just as we all started with the books left by the colonization in our countries. Okay? Then as they went, they started to realize that maybe some of the concepts in the books were not really adapted to the Japanese culture. So then they started, you know, improving on the books to reach a point where they went for a complete overhaul of the pedagogic tools that they were using with their children. This is just to say that when you say we are importing, yes, obviously I mean, we didn't even import; it was imposed on us. At independence, we did it was an imposition. I mean, the content of the program. I mean, when I was a kid, I was told that my ancestors were les Gaulois, and I know better the history of Jeanne d'Arc than the history of Emir Abdel Qadir, who is our founder in Algeria, state founder. So that is something. But this means that also we have to do our own national efforts to help our teachers and our experts to rewrite the programs as they go. But there is no way you can tell me, no, we don't import. So if you don't import, you find yourself with nothing. That's the problem also, you see? So we should be balanced when we have those kinds of judgments. Just as we saw efforts and achievements of African Union, yes, the African Union doesn't have a territory. So African Union cannot implement itself. All what I said here, if you tell me, can you do something which will have an impact tomorrow? I will tell you, no, I can't. Why? Because every country is a sovereign country. And it is the decision of the government of the country to do or not to do something. I'm not going to impose on them. I'm not here for that. But what we are doing, for instance, is to try to harmonize policies, to give guidance. All what I said, we have a lot. We have this continental education strategy for Africa, which gives pillars and guidance and objectives that African countries could be inspired by to improve on their education systems, to try to find quality education, to try to sort out all the issues that we mentioned. Actually, they are in our continental education strategy. We try to harmonize policies, for instance, also for the recognition of diplomas and the qualifications. I mean, if you are qualified in South Africa, are you sure that if you go to Senegal tomorrow or to Cote d'Ivoire, you are going to get a job without having a problem with your qualifications, your diplomas? You don't know. Sometimes they tell you, oh, no, you are not. These are not recognized. So we have put in place a mechanism whereby countries could look at the qualification standards, etc., so that tomorrow, especially now that we are going with the African Continental Free Trade Area, the mobility of people should follow, and for mobility of people to happen, you have to have this kind of mutual recognition of qualifications, that if I'm trained in Zimbabwe and I go to Central Africa, I can work with my training in Zimbabwe and vice versa. So these are the elements that the African Union does. It tries to look at higher levels, to harmonize, to give guidance, to give policies, to give strategies that countries could be, and particularly the countries who are low income and do not have the capacity to do these things on their own, so they can be inspired, or they can just follow the recommendations of the African Union. Partnership is always, partnership is always like a schizophrenic situation whereby we like it and we don't like it. Just exactly like partnership between a man and a woman. There are positive and negative effects, and it's a trade-off. I mean, when you said partners have interests, yes, partners have interests. But also we have interest in partnership because we don't have the capacity to do it on our own. And nowadays we live in a world of complexity, and a world where if you close doors to collaboration and partnership, you do not exist, and you will disappear. So it is a must, but how can we deal with it? That is where, if we have clear understanding of our objectives, clear understanding of where we want to go, we can really make partnership a very, very strong leverage towards sustainable development in Africa. But if we are lazy and we are just here waiting for an envelope of money to come, then of course it may be misused, and it may result in either just waste of resources, or sometimes going to some results that were not the expected results. So it's for us to have clarity on our objectives and on the content of what we want to do with partnership. And in my view, and having worked in the UN system for a very long period, I think countries are very, very much aware of what they want to do. So they are not fooled by, because you bring money, you are going to influence them or something like that. So I think partnership is very important. Partnership is even needed. It's up to the negotiators, because a partnership is, as a partner, it means that you are there, I am here, and we have something, we have a trade-off in the middle, and we are talking about it, isn't it? So that way, if you look at it that way, I think more and more countries are very clear on what they want to do. And I can tell you that the African Union also is in partnership with many partners. We are in partnership with UN. UN, usually you have a lot of nationals which are working in the UN. UN is like African Union. There is no UN territory, and there is no UN nationality. UN civil servants are from all the countries in the world, and they know about the problematics, etc., etc. It's UNESCO who wrote the general history of Africa. It's not an African country. It's UNESCO. So it means that we can go on and on this discussion, but I think in the framework of this meeting, I will stop there. But we can continue the discussion of the record if you wish. Anything else? I think I have answered. عربيتي شوية, so I'm not sure I can give you interviews in Arabic, because my Arabic is Algerian Arabic, and you may not understand much.
Thank you, colleagues. May I ask that we have the Arabic session right after this? Unfortunately, we have to come to the close of this press briefing. We very much appreciate you, Commissioner, for extending your time to us and sharing your insights, as well as members of the press, for always being very good partners and sharing the African story. This conversation doesn't stop here. We'll continue engaging on matters education all throughout the year and throughout the summit. And also remember to find all the updates of the work that is going on through the summit on AU website and AU platforms, au.nt. So please keep us engaged and do follow the conversations there. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you.